Greetings, everyone. This is Abhivardhan from the Bharat Pacific, and we are live again for another Bharat Pacific interview. Last time we had, if I'm right, Mohammed Salman, and this time we have another expert on West Asia, Dr. Alvite Ningthoujham. Aditya is joining us as a co-host. So, Dr. Alvite, welcome to the Bharat Pacific. Uh, Dr. Alvite is a faculty member at in Symbiosis, Pune, if I'm right. And he is a distinguished expert in international relations when it comes to West Asia and Indo-West Asian relations. We have had a discussion a long time back on the situation in Afghanistan and even other things, and we have discussed about how the economic relationship between India and West Asian countries may grow. So, in this interview, we would be focusing on India, Turkey, and West Asia in terms of how Turkey is becoming relevant as a geopolitical actor in West Asia, and how should we look at it as an actor beyond the usual understanding of what Turkey is. So, to begin with this discussion, Dr. Elvite, my first question is uh, how do we understand the India-Turkey relations in a very basic way? Like, what is it? How it has been post Cold War, and as of 2023, how is the India-Turkey relationship? And maybe then we can discuss a little bit about the recent events.
Right. Thank you, Avi, for having me once again on the show. It's always a pleasure to be back. We also discussed something very important that has got to do with the Abraham Accords and the economic implications of this reconciliation on India's engagement with the region. And today you have picked up another very important topic on Turkey, India, and West Asia. If you look at the current dynamics pertaining to India's foreign relations with the West Asian region, Turkey is one important we need to improve our relations with. It's also because of the importance of Turkey in the region, which we will come to a little later, the internal dynamics or the regional dynamics of Turkish foreign policy or the internal dynamics. The relationship between Turkey and India, while we talked about the historical ties or the civilizational linkages, that's been the pattern of our discussions. We seem to, talking only about the historical and the civilizational ties. But then if you look at the current scenario when it comes to these two countries, there are a lot more both the countries can do, but there are certain differences that exist between the two countries, particularly pertaining to the political relations. The kind of rhetorics that have been coming out from Turkey in the recent times have been one of the main reasons why Indian government is not very keen to take this forward unless and until there are certain understandings between the two sides. For instance, the kind of stance Turkish government takes on the Kashmir issue, or even some of the issues pertaining to our, say, the minorities, or say the Muslim citizens in the country. This has been one of the reasons why the relationship has not been able to, see that actual potential. Unlike the other countries with whom we are doing fairly well in the recent times, you picked up some of the major countries in the West Asian region, particularly in the Gulf region. The relationships are going really leaps and bounds, making it very comprehensive than ever before. But Turkey, there were lots of hopes. I myself had written a couple of pieces sometime in 2017, 18, when Erdogan was visiting India, that this could be one of the game changers, or this could be one of the drivers of the relationship to build up some sort of a political goodwill between the two sides. But we haven't seen much of an update. We haven't seen much of a progress in the relationship. But as I mentioned at the beginning, that Turkey is a very important country, particularly given the location, where it is located as a gateway to Asia and Europe, and at the same time with the kind of an influence it has in Central Asia, the Caucasus, Middle East, in the European Union region, also in Africa. This could be one important country which we should make some more efforts to improve the relationship on various fields, security, economic, and this is also a good time to mend the ties, because Turkey is looking outward for economic assistance, and that's one of the reasons why you can see Turkey warming up to Saudi Arabia, for whom they have been vehemently opposing in the last 3 to 4 years. You can see Turkey warming up to UAE. You can see Turkey, getting closer to the Israeli government in the last 3 to 4 years, after the relationships nosedived in 2010 and 2018. So it's an important country, no doubt. Everybody would agree that the kind of role it's playing in the Middle East right now, the kind of a role it's playing in the Russia-Ukraine crisis, it was, whether one likes it or not, Turkey was one of the first countries that kept some platform to the Russians and the Ukrainians to speak their differences out and to come to some sort of a solution. So we can go further, from here, from this primer. Yeah.
So, Dr. Alvite, taking forward from here, now India and Turkey, and not very long ago, perhaps till a decade ago, like even we may not have been allies, but we have a sense of like a historical perspective. We had good
Hmm.
people to people relations. Like there was a non-alignment kind of legacy. There was like basically we had a good relations even if we were not allies. But the Erdogan's 2.0, like the second half of Erdogan's political career, where everything became like a
Hmm.
kind of very contentious. Now, how much do you think has this become more of a structural thing, or how much do you think is basically a leadership led? So basically, this is how much of is this just Erdogan led, or how much of this the current contention is like more at systematic level? Do you think now it is too late to mend ties if tomorrow Erdogan is not at like his primary
So
position?
there needs to be. You're absolutely right. The pattern, you can see that, Turkey, particularly, particularly in the 1990s, when Erdogan became one of the prominent figures in the political scenarios inside the country. Things have started to take some turns, which in a way uh, impacted on its relations not only with India but also with the larger countries in the region. While Turkey has come having a very good relationship with the United States, particularly during the Cold War period, and at the same time maintaining its relations with countries like Russia and China in the recent times. A larger shift in the Turkish foreign policy came about when Erdogan became the leader. He had brought in many changes within the country. While we talked about secularism in Turkey, there are certain uh, signals or indications that have come up from Turkey that it is heading a little bit towards of that little strict this Islam sort of rules or governance. Uh, its ambitions to become one of the champions of the Islamic world or the Muslim causes had also become one of the important factors that kind of disturb the equilibrium with many countries. That you can see in not only with India. Right, you rightly pointed out that I would say that Erdogan's policy has largely to do with what we are seeing in terms of not having a very good sort of a cordial relationship with between Ankara and New Delhi. Uh, but having said that, the structural changes in the way how the governance is being carried forward, the policy being wielded by him. If you see that in the recent times, like he has come really full throttle against almost all the Islamic Muslim countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, UAE, and challenged the even the supremacy of Saudi Arabia as the custodian of the two holy mosques. So those kind of rhetorics have caused certain uneasiness within the leaderships in different countries, including India. The kind of statements they have come out during the abrogation of Article 370, and that is a very important issue for us. And we keep telling the outside world that this is our internal affair, and we do not want to be pointed out by any other country with what we are doing internally. But then that statement or the kind of stance Turkey has vis-a-vis the Kashmir issue could be one of the very, very sticking points between the two sides, unless and until there are certain But nowadays, see, it's a real politic. But everybody looks for their own strategic interests and their own vested interests. But for India, when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir issue, it's a very sensitive issue, regardless of whether we are playing real politic or very pragmatic foreign policy. If someday Turkey decides to make it low and not see something which they haven't done with the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims, while they haven't come out very heavily in the recent times against the Chinese about their treatments of the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province. So if they have done some sort of a course correction in terms of what they have been believing with regard to India's policy over Jammu and Kashmir, there could be, of course, certain improvements, to my opinion, that we could see in India's relationship with Turkey.
That's interesting to start with. And so, when we look at the Turkish political stances, obviously ideology is the prime facie aspect of it in certain ways, if not in every way. And I think when it comes to the realities in Turkey, let's now a little bit move to Turkey's internal dynamics. So, we have seen in the past that India has developed its own relations with countries like Greece and Cyprus
Mm.
because of how Turkey is, how things happen when it comes to interacting with the Turkish counterparts. And beyond ideological positions, there's a security and other aspect, a dynamic as well, because obviously, why not? In the Mediterranean, you would try to have a good relationship with countries like Greece and Cyprus. So there is a thing that Erdogan is trying to revisit the relationships. So, do we really think that the internal dynamics are guiding it, or is it something like, fine, maybe it's more about the economic situation? Because what happens is that we have had the situation, which is the earthquake in Turkey, unfortunate
Mm.
situation. Uh, Many countries supported Turkey, sent their task force and people. We did
Yes.
in a great way. We created facilitation centers and we helped people who were affected, and it was a great contribution because we understand that all these task forces which are sent, all these cooperations which happen in
Mm.
earthquakes and such calamities are not just done for the sake of humanitarian reasons. They're also a matter of diplomatic gesture and building up relationships on a matter of trust and other things. So despite the support that India gave, which was tremendous in certain ways, very agile, very quick by the Indian army, the is it really that the internal dynamics have kind of changed? Because the way Erdogan reacted on, again, the same Kashmir issue, the same minorities issue, it seems a bit jarring. It seems a bit erratic. So, what do you think about it?
Um, that's a fascinating question, Avi. I think the kind of changes that we have begun to see in Turkey could be largely to do with the internal dynamics, and that's, I think, to my mind, been triggered by a very, very serious economic situation that they have right now at hand. And also when we look at any internal dynamics in international relations or external dynamics, we have this something called levels of analysis, where we measure or where we study the international developments, where we study the regional developments, national domestic developments. Um, for quite a while, Turkey has been flexing its muscles beyond its weight, or you know, and that paid the price of its came at the cost of its relations with some of the heavyweights in the region, including particularly UAE and Saudi Arabia, with whom they had very, very strong, robust economic partnerships, including with Israel in terms of technological and military security cooperation. One of the strongest military security cooperation, particularly in terms of intelligence sharing, was with Israel. But yeah, as I mentioned as I responded to Aditya's question about the structural changes that's coming in within, the internal dynamics is now driving Erdogan to make some again, structural changes in the way how it's dealing with the regional countries as well as the international partners. I'm sure you know that Turkey has this policy of zero problems with the neighbors. That's been the policy of the Justice and Development Party, AKP. Zero problems with the neighbors, but you can see that not not living up to its expectations. Like, barring, so they had to go to Syria because of certain concerns with regard to the Kurdish question, and then they had to again, the reasons why they have not the reasons why they have downgraded the relationships with Iran, with Saudi Arabia, UAE, are also on certain other ideological aspects. The internal dynamics now, I think the economic factor, the economic situation that we are getting to see inside Turkey is becoming one of the very important factors to Turkish government, mending its ties with relationships with some of these partners. The relationship with the United States has been a little uneven. They have had a very good relationship with Donald Trump because Donald Trump did not give much attention to the human rights issues. But Joe Biden came back, and as you know, that Joe Biden's one of the important policies is to have some sort of a straight record in terms of human rights. But then you have seen how the relationship unfolded between Turkey and the U.S. in the recent times, ever since Donald Trump came to power and then taken over by Joe Biden. Even the Joe Biden administration is giving some signals to Turkey to mend the relationship because of the ongoing crisis in Russia and Ukraine. Coming to your question, the internal dynamics, of course, to my mind, less to do with the ideological posture right now. They would want to have some players, some reliable partners who they can bang on for some of their economic problems, to solve some of the, not solving entirely, but to give, because see, losing countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia, who are two economic giants in West Asian region, it can cost a fortune to them. So you saw recently, I think UAE gave some $1 million as an aid to Turkey, and they are also increasingly looking towards Saudi Arabians to give similar help. So regardless of the the ideological differences or sectarian issue, which of course is very embedded and deep rooted in the Middle East, the internal dynamics is driving Erdogan to make certain reforms or certain changes in the way how he's going to deal with the region. Similarly with Pakistan, we can take the example of Pakistan at the backyard. So yeah.
So yeah, my question was next about Turkey and Pakistan and where does it fit in India equation. Now, the India specific problem, with Turkey is like its camaraderie with the Pakistan in the recent past, and it parroting Pakistan's thoughts in Kashmir, and like India has also tried to like hedge its bets by giving voice to Cyprus, Greece, and selling some defense arms to Armenia. Like it's trying to hedge its bets, but like I can see the value for Pakistan by having Turkey on its side. But what is the tangible benefits Turkey actually sees beyond the ideological grouping of okay, I have an only Islamic nuclear power nation in my bracket. But I don't think I assume Turkish is wise enough to know that Pakistan won't choose like a Islamic leader between say Iran or Saudi or like I would say Iran is like a Shia nation, so Iran is not that optional. But between Saudi and Turkey, if Pakistan were to choose, it won't choose. So, like, what is the benefit Turkey is getting out of it, like in terms
See,
of leadership?
yeah, Aditya, it's a very fascinating equations. I must say, Pakistan is sharing with almost all these countries in the Middle East. I think you have already given the answer at the beginning of your question that what does what does Turkey see in Pakistan right now? Nothing. It's to be very blunt, and that's the kind of an impressions. That's the kind of an understanding. Even some of these big countries like UAE and Qatar or Saudi Arabia have also begun to realize in the recent times that there's nothing much we can do with regard to this country. Unfortunately, Pakistan remained one of the stumbling blocks in our relationships with the Middle Eastern countries in the 80s, 70s, and the 80s during the heights of the Cold War. Our bilateral relationships were largely determined by few factors, and Pakistan was one of them. But in the recent times, whether one likes it or not, the manner in which India is growing economically, politically, technologically, and you name it, we are considered as one of the serious international players in the current scenario right now. There are many, I'm sure there are many debates about whether India is rising or India is stagnated. But at least our international profile in the recent years have gone up really, really significantly high. That also has given some sort of a food for thought to not only the Middle Eastern countries, but to almost every country in different parts of the world, that India is one country that needs to be taken very seriously now. So if you compare the weight of both, India on one hand, Pakistan on one hand, I don't think we need the rocket science answers to say where we are and where Pakistan is. All right. So maybe you're right, say in terms of like, okay, Pakistan seems to play some sort of a role in the OIC, where many of the countries use it as a platform to raise the issue of the Kashmir and other sufferings of our brothers within quotes, our brothers and sisters in different parts of the world, also in India. Apart from that, I don't see Pakistan as a hindrance. Should not be a hindrance if Turkey were to really rip the benefit out of its relationship with India, if it wants to improve or strengthen or build upon the ties between India and Turkey. They should not let that. We in India, for one, have not made Pakistan any more a factor in our relationship with any other countries. We are dealing it on a very pragmatic basis. No longer look at Saudi Arabia and UAE. They are very close. They are very close to Pakistan, but the way how they are handling Pakistan and the way how they are handling India is an answer for this question also.
So,
So
sorry for
Turkey,
the
yeah,
interruption, but I think Turkey is the only country perhaps today in the region where Pakistan actually matters in bilateral relations with India, I think.
hmm,
Otherwise, we
yeah,
have
that,
moved on. We have moved on beyond Pakistan with the rest of the region, like basically.
yeah, yeah. So that's the as much till the time Turkey continues to support Pakistan's stance on Jammu and Kashmir, that's going to cost us the relationship. That's going to be. See, others are like, to my mind, are pretty minimal. But what pricks us also is the support that Pakistan gets from countries like Turkey. And why Turkey is doing that, as I mentioned at the beginning of my deliberation, that it still wants to be the ideological leader in the Islamic world. There are 2 or 3 countries like Iran wants to do that. Iran's been challenging the supremacy of the Gulf monarchies or the Saudi monarchies from 79 onwards after the Islamic Revolution in Iran. Similarly, the Turkish government, particularly under Erdogan, has been giving all kinds of direct and indirect signals that we are not happy with this sort of supremacy being exercised by countries like Saudi Arabia. If you recall, just about 4 years ago, there was some sort of an attempt being made by Turkey to have some sort of a groupism. It includes Iran, it includes Pakistan, it includes Malaysia. So Turkey, Iran, Malaysia, then they were trying to call Bangladesh also to have
Qatar.
some sort of yes, Qatar, and that was during the heights of the GCC crisis, 2017, which got resolved in 2021 between Saudi and Qatar. So they had that kind of an ambition. So I had raised this issue with one of the scholars from Singapore Middle East Institute, talked about Malaysia's role in that. And so like Mahathir was too old to even rule the country. How would he be able to steer this kind of ambition being propped up by countries like Turkey? So this Pakistani factor, you are right, Aditya, that in India, Turkey relations will matter, because there are no other. See, as much as we are dealing with Saudi Arabia, UAE, or Qatar, or Oman, or Bahrain, like in almost all the possible fields, we haven't had much of that kind of a comprehensiveness with Turkey at the moment. So that can be a sticking point. That can be a thorn in our relationship. And I'm sure there are a few reports that have come up in the recent days also about um in India Turkey betraying India ideologically and politically. While it was really good on our part to send our rescue teams and other rehabilitation efforts during the earthquake, that should also be a signal to them that we are a force to reckon with. Yeah.
So, Abhivadan, if I may,
Go
yes,
on.
yeah. So, taking the discussion away from India a bit, now that we have only limited time, like 15 minutes at most left.
It's
Uh,
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, taking the discussion away from India, you were talking about the Islamic leadership. Now, yesterday we have seen one of the most significant diplomatic coups from China in the region,
Hmm.
and which has uh, uh, led to a quite a chatter across the foreign policy commentary saying, where does this put U.S. security guarantees in the region? What does it mean for U.S. leadership in the region? What does it mean for like larger Israel question, Islamic leadership? Basically, what does it mean for the whole region? So how would Turkey look at this dynamic? I mean, there is also a recent crisis, economic crisis backed by like the big earthquake, once the largest earthquake in decades for Turkey, if not in centuries. So both the things have come in successive episodes. What does it mean for Turkey's ability in the region or leadership in the region?
Are you talking about the reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and
And Iran,
Iran?
yeah, yeah. Yesterday,
It's a very interesting development, and in involving China makes it more interesting for all of us. Okay. Uh, Earlier, that of course your last the, the, the last few stands that you have taken up in that you have included in your question about what Turkey will look at this development, and as I mentioned, see, when you do not have enough money for it to run the country, uh, flexing your muscles or trying to meddle in the other internal affairs will again cost you a fortune. Something which the Iranians are also facing at the moment because of their proxy politics in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq also. If you just before I come to your question, the protests inside Iran that we have been seeing for the last few years, it's not only about hijab, it's not only about the ban on moral policing. There are quite a few internal dynamics that have been going on inside the country. A constant tussle between, they call it jihadi and the jihadis, like the reformists and the conservatives. The involvement in different parts of the West Asian region by giving logistical and financial support have not gone down well with with many civilians inside the country, because the inflation, the rate of unemployment still remain very high inside Iran, and they have not been able to meet many of the challenges, particularly because the youth population are more aware than how they used to be. They are seeing what kind of luxuries are being enjoyed by their peers in different parts of West Asia and elsewhere. That's also the reason why Iran has started talking to UAE and Saudi Arabia. There are lots of communications going on between UAE and Saudi Arabia, UAE and Iran, UAE and Iran and Saudi Arabia in the recent years, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, and that meetings have picked up. Closed door meetings, back channel diplomacy, quiet diplomacy, have all picked up in the recent times, because they really want to have certain partners who they could, go into some sort of economic partnerships or engagement. Similarly, with what happened yesterday, the big announcement that has come from with regard to it's a it will be it's a very interesting development. It also talks about the perceived decline. I would say, still, I would use the word perceived decline of the United States in the Middle East. Uh, Middle US, whether one likes it or not, has been one of the strongest players, particularly for the Gulf countries. Since the late 80s and the early 90s, and we started discussing about the perceived decline of the United States from 2011, when Obama did not do much to save the Hosni Mubarak's government in Egypt. Okay, that triggered the discussion that US is no longer looking at, and of course, with its pivot to Asia and the Indo-Pacific strategy, they have a larger threat, according to them. That is China in the Indo-Pacific or in the South China Sea region. So amidst that, development, we have this country, China, entering into the Middle Eastern region. And China and Middle East is not a new region for China. They have been dealing with this region for quite a while, mostly in economic and commercial fields. But they also have been looking to increase their political footprints in the region in terms of, say, by meddling or by playing certain roles in some of the regional affairs. The first signals, to me, one of the first signals came out in about 7-8 years ago, when they started to show some interest to be a part of the Israeli-Palestinian peace talks. I think, if I am not wrong, they have even come out with some 5 or 6 point peace plan. Of course, that did not see the light of day, because that's a very sensitive issue. But now, the current dynamics between Iran, Saudi, and China, and even Iraq, to an extent, played a role in this reconciliation, or the announcement that we heard yesterday. It's going to be a very important moment for China's presence in the Middle East. No longer it would be this also kind of signal the entry of China in the political affairs.
Yeah,
Earlier, there were
what's fascinating is, like, earlier it was seen that China has been active only in the affairs of Central Asia, like proactively. But even in Afghanistan, negotiation of Afghanistan deal, we saw China being part of it, but not proactive enough. So yesterday, when we saw, like, the announcement came from, like, it is perhaps the, one can say, unprecedented Chinese involvement, proactively, like China involving very proactively in the region's diplomatic affairs. Like, as you have mentioned, it was mostly economic centered. Now China sees that it has to go beyond just economics to ensure its interests in the region.
Yes, it's also, to me, one of the indicators of the emerging world order. One of the indicators of the emerging world order, where we are seeing Chinese political roles in different parts of the world, particularly now. Say, this is going to be an interesting development, because China and Iran are very strong partners. They have their own issues. That's not to say that they have a very robust, very successful relationship. Saudi and Iran, of course, Saudi and China has been ramping up their cooperation for some time, and this is again the 2011 incident in Egypt has also given some sort of realization to the Gulf countries to look to other alternative partners, and that's when the Chinese government comes into play. They have been trying to. They like Avi also talked about, and you also have mentioned the Gulf countries. There's also an inward looking approach now with this, not only looking towards the Western countries. That is, when we talk about the Western countries, for the Gulf countries, it's the United States. Whether one likes it or not, some of the important peace agreements between Israelis and the Palestinians have also been signed under the aegis of the United States, Camp David Accord, Oslo Accord, you name them. So the prominence is still there, but yeah, in the recent times, getting some sort of a security guarantee, they do not see. There's not much of a credibility nowadays about the US, whether they would be able to give some guarantee for security to the Gulf partners. That's the reason why you can see these groupings coming up in the region, and at the same time, the balance of power is shifting towards the Asian region, within which some of the Gulf countries are also looking towards China. So It's uh, one of the realignments of relations that we are getting to see in the region. We already have seen that with Israel and two very important countries, Bahrain and UAE, in the region. Now we are seeing this is again a plus point for China also. Earlier, as I mentioned, it's
But
very
what does
strategic.
it mean for? But what does it mean for Indo-Abraham Accords? Like,
Even the re-establishment of the diplomatic relations. There are many uncertainties about these realignments. Whether all of because countries like Israel will look at this very cautiously. US will, of course, look at this development very cautiously. Iran. So for now, it's going to be very bilateral. It's going to be very bilateral. The regional dynamics, I have not made any assessment of this because it just happened yesterday, and we haven't got many reports about it. It's only the analysis that have come up from different experts and the think tanks and the government sources. But whether Israel, because Israel is also talking to the Saudis, they have been talking to the Saudis. They have been talking to whether, and Israel and China also has a very good partnership. Something which the US keeps an eye on. Very suspicious about what the Chinese are doing in Israel also. We will need to see whether there would be a point in time when Israel could use this as use its relations with China, or use it's some sort of a tacit understanding with Saudi Arabia to put some pressure on Iran to scale down its anti-Israel rhetorics, which of course is at its highest peak nowadays. You often at times in the last 3 to 4 days there are lots of news that have come out with regard to Israel and Iran antagonism over the nuclear program. So in see the Abraham Accord, it's not going to will not have any impact on that. These countries know what they're doing, and they will not let it. With Israeli position on this will be very interesting. It's going to be an interesting position. We will need to watch out what the Israelis would have to say about this. Of course, they will not come out with an open statement. One can say that yes, we welcome this sort of a. The more you have this coordination, it's better for the region. In the Middle East, two important, apart from the Islamist groups or the terrorist organizations, those can be tackled. And they have tackled it also. As much as we are struggling to tackle, they are struggling, but then they have tackled it. But the two larger countries' antagonism has not been good for the region. That is Iran and Saudi Arabia. So why I'm saying this is because if you have a flare-up, a military confrontation tomorrow between Iran and Saudi Arabia, it's not only these two countries that are going to fight. There are many other proxy players that would come into play and will turn the region into a fireball. You would see that in Syria, you would see that in Lebanon, you would see that in Iraq, and which will also have a wider repercussions in the other Sunni-dominated countries. So, which in a way gives a lot of leverage to China now. The political. Otherwise, all the discussions that we have been having with regard to China's involvement in the Middle East is mostly from the prism of Belt and Road Initiative, economic partnerships, strategic partnerships, military cooperation, but less to do with their political involvement. So now they would, of course, increase the. They are very good with the optics. They have been, but then now they have done something concrete by making two countries reach this sort of understanding and an agreement that, to my mind, whether we like it or not, will raise the profile of China.
Yeah. So I have a question, since we have discussed about the recent reestablishment of the diplomatic relations. So there are two aspects of foreign policy groupings which are becoming popular and becoming mainstream. One, we call it security minilateralism,
Hmm.
Another version of it without adding the hard power element will be soft power unilateralism or economic unilateralism, or it could be like how the Indo-Pacific Quad works: India, US, Australia, and Japan. Right? I mean, we started with the spirit of the Quad properly. I mean, the 2017 part was different when we elevated ourselves at the level of not just foreign ministers beyond. Right? We started with the spirit of the Quad under the Biden administration. Then we went to critical technologies. We started with vaccines and others, and now we have ICETs. And I think as of Raisina dialogue, I think we are already working on maritime security. So the elevation of the Quad at least shows that security minilateralism, economic minilateralism is on the way. Now, why am I referring this? So Turkey is a very interesting country. You yourself said that, and we know that it's interacting with the Israelis, the Emiratis.
Hmm.
Obviously, it will try to create its own shift. I think when it comes to Pakistan, you very rightly pointed out that it's more about like the ideological continuum. But whether Malaysia and Turkey would continue with that is we have to see. But my question is, likewise, when security minilateralism is becoming popular and important, economic minilateralism is becoming popular, like the I2U2, the Quad, even the Indian Ocean initiatives, in which Italy
Hmm.
also joined recently in the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative. Uh, where do we see Turkey in it? Because it's a thing which I really wish to ask about. That is Turkey more interested into security multilateralism, or will it adapt from the China way on this? And then maybe we can go a little bit on India, because how would India be taking this up? So
See,
Just
it's
to,
going to be. Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah.
I beg your
yeah,
pardon. Like just to add, because we have a limited time left, I will just add the conclusion question also, if viewers are
sure,
member.
we can.
The conclusion question would be, because there is elections coming in Turkey, and because
Okay.
we don't have a very
Hmm.
neutral perspective on who is going to win, who is not going to win. So, what would be the likely
Hmm.
Turkish scenario vis-a-vis India, or like the rest of the world, if tomorrow, say, like if we say Erdogan loses, what does
Hmm.
then that mean for Turkey and the rest of the world? Which would you?
Okay, that's two very interesting questions to conclude the session. Yeah,
Yeah.
first one was on the maritime and the economic, and the second was on the elections coming up. I'll briefly take on the elections part. Erdogan. I think there's a trend. There's a trend which is going on in different parts of the world where one leader is more or less declared as the leader for life. We have seen that with China, which just yesterday or day before yesterday again. Uh, we have, of course, US is a very interesting case. Donald Trump and Joe Biden. India, we have a figure, we have a prime minister. There are no other visible significant challenges to his position. Even in Turkey, also, I think this person has firmly established its influence and power. Uh, he's going to use the nationalist card inside Turkey. Uh, the elections, I think, are in this year, 2023. Uh, so what he is going to do is, use some of this, recent developments by building up partnerships, trading partnerships, and also encouraging democracy, and at the same time emphasizing on the Islamic identity of the country. So these are some of the cards that he will likely use. One is by expanding its foreign relations with many of these countries, saying that I have been able to streamline the differences, and now they are cooperating with us. At the same time, the Islamist identity, which he has been doing for quite a while, emphasizing on that Turkey's Islamic identity. Uh, Competitors, I don't see anyone at the moment. Uh, Many of these churnings that we have begun to see in Turkey in the recent months or in the last 1.5, 2 years time can also play to have uh, go in his favor. Uh, uh, how he is handling, regardless of the economic situation right now, and that also has given some sort of a leverage to him to use his cards by all this the factors that I just mentioned about building more partnerships, trading partnerships, reaching out to different countries. So that could work well to his favor. And we won't be surprised. One should not be surprised if Erdogan comes back. For instance, like I've never ruled out Benjamin Netanyahu, okay, in Israel. I've never ruled him out. He was out for a while. Yeah, he was out for a while. Bennett came in, Yair Lapid came in, only for a brief period of time, but I have never ruled him out. I always had a suspicion that this guy's going to come back and he is back in the power. Similarly, with Erdogan also is going to use some of those cards, the identity cards, the economic trade partnerships, the foreign diplomacy, political diplomacy. So that is about the election. About the obvious question with regard to building these minilaterals, military security. For now, I think Turkey would want to have some sort of partnerships on the economic realms and also energy realms. Energy realms because of the Russia-Ukraine, and Turkey for long has been wanting to reduce its dependence on Russia for energy. That's the reason why Turkey has been playing a very delicate role in this crisis, supporting, not supporting West's sanctions or resolutions against Russia, but at the same time supplying certain logistical requirements to the Ukrainian government. So that, kind of balancing out, and it's a very delicate balancing Turkey is doing at the moment. But major concern would be its energy and economic, the financial part of it. So that's also one of the reasons why they are warming up to the Israelis. Israel has discovered one of the largest oil fields in 2010, Leviathan and Tamar, and they have become one of the gas exporters from the region. So in the times to come, Israel is going to remain another, not remain, Israel is going to become another important gas exporters from the West Asian regions. I have done a piece on this recently in 2021, writing about India and Israel energy partnerships. They already have started discussing this. To supply. Israel has also this ambition to supply gas to the European countries, and they already talked about undersea cable pipelines. But the catch is, the Cypriot the conflict. Turkey would be willing to be a part of this, pipeline project, but when it comes to some of the territorial issues between the Cyprus and, that's going to be a problem. But economic partnerships to build up economic, to have more partners in the economic realm would be one of the objectives for Turkey right now. But even in security, also, like given the strategic location where Turkey is located, particularly in terms of maritime, that's also one of the reasons why China has they have signed the BRI agreement in the midst of 2010s, about the port development projects and the others. The military security remains a potential domain where Turkey could go into. They already are doing that with some, with Russia and the others. But now with the realignment and the developing political scenario in the region, it might take some time. This is also what I have discussed in my paper recently, last year in September, on Israel and Turkey. Economic partnership, energy partnership are two important areas where they would where they would go into some sort of a full throttle cooperation. Military partnerships will come in gradually, but for that, both needs to have some sort of a confidence to trust one another. Yeah.
Great. It was a very riveting discussion. I wish we could have had more points to discuss, but since we have time constraints, anyways, I think Dr. Alvite, it was a pleasure to have you, and maybe in future we would have you again for a discussion on related issues
I
in
look
West
forward
Asia.
to it. I
And
look
thank you
forward
very
to it.
much. I hope you had a good time with us.
Oh yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Just that, like, we have a little bit of limitations for time. Otherwise,
Yeah.
We'll do something else again. The only thing is that I mostly